All right. Welcome and thank you all for coming. Super excited to have you all here and talk about where we've been with AI Dungeon and where we're going next. Today we're going to be introducing the next development, the next phase of AI Dungeon, where we're going. And we're really excited to share this with all of you and with the community. So over the past year, we've done a lot of work to build the foundation for what comes next. Just for context, one of the things we ran into with AI Dungeon over the last couple of years is that when AI Dungeon started, we really were just iterating and exploring what AI Dungeon was on the fly. And that was great because there was lots of exploration. But over time, what we ran into is that we had built up a lot of tech debt and just learned a lot of lessons around how do we build the architecture for this game and how do we, set this up. And we realized we had gotten to a point that tech debt was really just holding us back from being able to continually improve and innovate on the experience. And so with Phoenix, we decided that we needed to take the time to do things right and rebuild that foundation so that we could have a really strong base on top of which we could build AI Dungeon into something even grander. So after several months of a lot of hard work by the team, we're finally finishing up Phoenix. And with that, we're really excited to share and start sharing what we've been working on and what's coming to AI Dungeon next. We also want to do things a little bit differently than we've done in the past. And we really want to involve the whole community along the way as we build. So, we're going to be sharing some things a lot earlier than maybe we would have before or other games did, because we want to build in public and continually be sharing and learning from you and getting your feedback along the whole way. And so we're going to be sharing some things today that are very early. And so, caveat that it's all early. It may change a lot over the next several months, but we're sharing it so we can get your feedback, hear what you're excited about, hear, what you feel like is missing, and be able to use that along the way. So before we talk in the specifics, I want to take a step back and talk a little bit about kind of the broader world of AI and especially with games. So obviously we're in kind of a unique moment in the world with AI. This is something at Latitude we've been excited about for a long time. We were one of the very first companies to use GPT models in a commercial product because we saw the ways that it would change and transform what we could do. And we're obviously really excited about what that could do for games. At heart, we are people who love creating, and imagining what kind of experiences that we can play. So I think that AI will transform a lot of different things in games. So I think, it's going to help people create games faster by helping generate assets, whether that's like narrative or images or voice. It's going to give users more tools to help them create content. And here's the thing that I think we're most excited about, and there still has not been a ton yet, which is how does AI enable us to create games that were never possible to create before? Because in many ways, you think about the games that are created now, and they don't actually do that much that's different from the games that were created 10 years ago, right? Like Skyrim came out over a decade ago, which is kind of wild. And so I think we're really ripe for creating things that are new and exciting and haven't been done before. And these are the kind of things that we've, as humans have been dreaming about for decades. You see this in books and movies and TV shows that imagine these worlds and these games that are not just these rigid constructions, but are dynamic and alive and adapt to what you want and can have this like beautiful organicness and just fun and excitement in creating and doing things that aren't possible in existing games. And so that's what we are really passionate about bringing to life. We don't just want to build games that, maybe have an NPC you can talk through a little bit, but doesn't really affect the world. We want games where the entire world is dynamic and living. AI Dungeon, I think, has taken us, we say 5% of the way towards that vision. And we've tried a lot of things, in between creating AI Dungeon now to figure out how do we go the next step. We've built probably 10 different AI game prototypes as we just explored, like, how do you create these kind of things with the existing technology? And so that's given us a lot of context to know, how do we do this? And now I think we're finally at a point where the technology is ready for us to be able to take that next step. And so I'm really excited to talk about what that looks like for AI Dungeon. And, again, we are still very early and lots of things likely will change, but there's a lot of exciting things that we're building and we're excited to get your feedback on. And so I think we have some visuals on what that is going to look like. Cool. Yeah. So as you can see, there's we're transitioning from just a story creation experience to something that is much more like a game where you have a character that you can define their image. What do they look like? Who are they? You can have not just story elements, but what are their stats? What are their skills? What are the things that define what they can do? And you end up much more like an RPG experience. And so that's what we're building is a version of AI Dungeon. We'll keep the creative version of AI Dungeon and continue to support it, but a version that's much more like an existing RPG, which is something that we've had users request many times over the last years. Skills and inventory and challenge and constraint. And I think we can finally build that in a meaningful way. There's something that I think many of us, me included, have really love in games, which is this ability to have meaningful challenge and then progress through that and become stronger and achieve interesting things. And there's something really meaningful about going through all these hard things at the end, like having this epic meaning, this quest you completed after navigating all these challenges. And with AI Dungeon in the past, we just haven't been able to do that. I think we all kind of, if you've played AI Dungeon, you've had the experience of like sometimes things just, it just lets you do it or it just happens. And that can be fun in a creative environment, but we want something that tests your creativity, that tests your ability to solve interesting challenges, that gives you this this excitement at progressing and growing and advancing your character in really fun ways. So that's one of the things that'll be in Heroes is a much more fleshed out set of state tracking with your character and that the game will remember. So Heroes, we have an early prototype. It tracks inventory. It changes your inventory as different things happen in the world. You gain experience and skills. You can get stronger. But not just your character. There's also going to be a persistent world that you are in. So much more than just world info, some information, but an actual map of locations that you can travel to, that you can explore, that you can discover, and that change over time. And this is farther down the road, but farther down the road, we're really excited about the idea of, what happens when you have almost Minecraft-like servers where you can create a world with your friends. You can all play in it. You can shape and change the world. Maybe, you leave and come back and you find out your friend has turned this town into an undead metropolis. And now it's like kind of affecting the entire region, and you can have this whole dynamic world that you're interacting with your friends or with other people you invite onto your server. So those are the kind of things that are going to be possible as we build out this more structured kind of persistent state world in AI Dungeon. The other thing that we're doing that is very different is with AI Dungeon, the AI was really just thinking, what happens next? What happens next? What happens next? And not really being intentional about what are the character arcs and the narrative arcs that this player is going to go on. And so with Heroes, we're crafting a much more interesting, compelling storyteller that both thinks about the narrative arcs and what are the obstacles you're going to run into and what are the challenges and where does this story go over the long term, while still being able to adapt to whatever the player is doing which I think is the challenging piece because, it's one thing to write, a narrative arc, but then when the player goes in a different direction, you have to figure out how do we adapt this and make this interesting, giving them freedom while still creating this meaningful story. One of the things also that helps with that is a much more robust quest system where we actually have quests that you both get from the story and are recognized and tracked for your character. So when you go, there was an adventure I had where I got this ability from my character advancement that I could talk to chickens. And I went and found this farmer and I started talking to his chickens, and I found out from the chickens that they'd had this like invader that was coming into their coop. And the AI was like, hey, that's a new quest. And then I immediately had a new quest pop up in my quest log that I could, follow that trail if I wanted to, and eventually get experience and level up my character from doing these interesting things. So that's the kind of thing that can happen, is these dynamic quests and narrative arcs that no one's written that quest before. That wasn't something that existed until it was a real thing in your world, right? And along with that, I mentioned it before, but there will be much more realistic constraints and challenge. So in Heroes, you can't just say, use the flamethrower, use the, the magical sword. If you don't have those, you actually have to have those in the inventory or the AI will catch you. And it creates this really fun challenge of how do I find these items, and there's bartering, there's shopkeepers that you can trade gold. You can, try and do quests to get money. And it creates this much more interesting game experience than AI Dungeon, where it's just kind of a creative mode and you can almost give yourself things. And one of the things I'm most excited about is with AI Dungeon, there's been limits to what we can improve because, there are features we can add and we can train better AI models, but there's only so many levers we had as developers to shift the experience. So it's actually pretty hard in existing AI Dungeon to shift the experience when people give us reports that like, oh, this is too easy, this is too hard, da da da. But with Heroes, we're going to have a much more powerful engine that we have many more levers that we can shift and change and continually improve the experience for our players. So to do all that, as I mentioned, we're essentially building an entirely new AI game engine. So it's really interesting because it's like nothing that's existed before. We've had to do a lot of our own innovation and development based on our experience trying to build, 10 different AI games. And so we've tried a lot of different things, seen what works, seen what doesn't. And so we've redesigned the game structure engine to allow this. And we've taken a lot of the lessons that we learned from AI Dungeon to make it much, much better. So we've designed the engine in a way that we can continually improve the experience much easier than we could with AI Dungeon, in a stable way for players. So it will let us continually deliver new updates, new features, new improvements at a much faster rate. It also involves a set of different models that all work together to deliver a magical experience. So rather than just one AI model that's telling the story, we have a set that are helping manage constraints and long-term planning and how the state and quest systems are all working together. And so we have this like system that we can continually improve to make the experience better and better. And finally, another thing we're doing with the engine is from the very beginning, we're designing a structure that will also give creators much more power to create once we open up creator tools after we've kind of solidified the core of the experience. So we've been alpha testing with alpha testers on Heroes, and it's amazing because within a few days, with the simple controls we've given to creators, they were already making scenarios where they were creating custom things with their own unique sets of skills and classes, and they were modifying it in these really powerful ways that just weren't possible in AI Dungeon. And so we're really excited as we get farther what it looks like when we really open up the world and the experience to creators so that they can modify and shape things in really interesting ways. Yeah, what's the long-term vision for Heroes and more broadly AI Dungeon? I want to reiterate that the core AI Dungeon experience is not going away. I kind of see it, as mentioned before, like Minecraft Creative and Minecraft Survival Mode as a good example. There's always value in being able to create in a way without constraints, and you can just build really interesting things in using your imagination. But there's also a lot of value in having this experience where you've challenge and progression. And so that's what Heroes is going to add, is that missing side of the piece that we haven't had before. And as we said, we're still really early, but we wanted to kind of announce what we're working on, and we're going to continually, share pieces of what we're working on, ask for feedback, and as soon as possible, make it so that players can test and give us feedback on the actual experience. We don't have a specific timeline for when that will happen yet, but we hope to make it pretty soon, and so we'll keep you all updated. When we do, I think we're going to follow kind of a similar model to Baldur's Gate, if any of you have played that, where the very early access, we will likely reset character progress each major update every 6 to 8 weeks, until we come out of that early access period, just so we can iterate on the design. So just as a heads up, if you do end up playing in the early access mode, we're going to be changing a lot, because there's so much still to figure out around, how is the world structured? How do characters advance and progress? And so we want to make sure we can have the room to create the best version of that while getting feedback from our players along the way. And we'll be doing occasional, Twitch live streams of our play tests, and we'll let the community know when those are happening as well. We've actually got a quick snippet of one of those play tests and one of my personal favorite Heroes moments so far. And we just wanted to share it to give an example, because it starts to give you a taste of the fun that Heroes can provide.
I'm in the market, and in mid-conversation, wild boars have burst into the market. I didn't just defend the butcher's stall. As the boars flew through the air to attack him, I thinly shaved them in midair since they
Wait. Okay, check your inventory. Did you get any bacon from that? Please tell me you got some bacon from shaving them.
Yep.
You got bacon from shaving the boars?
In midair.
That's amazing. What game can you do that in, Sean? Tell me a game where you can shave the boars midair to complete your quest to gain bacon.
It's amazing.
This is so good though, because the storyteller is planning interesting quest obstacles, and I love that it does that. Sean, you deserve the gourmet gladiator class now. That feat alone, I think, makes you deserve it.
Awesome. Yeah, this is one of the experiences we had a lot of. Oh. Sorry, I had to take myself off mute. We good? I'm not muted on my end. Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that. This is something that, I think it gives a good example of kind of the fun moments where you can have these unique things happen, but to have them not just happen in story, but be represented in this world that transforms and has state and persistence, I think is really exciting and fun. And this is something that we've had players request many times, to have this inventory, to have characters, to have all these things. So we're excited that we can finally deliver on these things that players have wanted for a long time. So now we're going to enter. That's kind of all we have to share right now. We'll have lots more to share later, but we do have some time for just Q&A, and so excited to answer some questions. Feel free to drop some questions or comments in the chat, and we'll answer. One of them that I think was brought up earlier was, will there be kind of limited ChatGPT actions for free players on Heroes? We don't know for sure exactly what it will look like. We want to get to the point that we can let players experience Heroes to some degree, even for free. We're gonna have to figure out what that looks like. The unit economics will be, it's gonna be more expensive to run Heroes because it does use more AI than existing AI Dungeon, and we're gonna be working to figure out how we can make that available at a free-to-play experience. So it might not be there initially as we kind of are figuring things out, but we definitely want to get to that direction and make it so that free players can experience the experience as well. Let's see, any other questions? Yeah. Yeah. So one of the questions was, what are some of my favorite moments in Heroes? So yeah, I think some of the things that have been really compelling for me, I mean, there's been a lot of really, really fun ones, but I think what's been most compelling for me is to have these experiences where I not just like accomplish something, but I have these journeys that the AI takes me on that feel really meaningful. And I think that's a combo of several things, you know, the challenges and progression where I can't just kind of jump there, and also the way that the AI is trying to guide kind of the pacing. But with Heroes, we're able to have these experiences where you kind of like, an example is Ryan was playtesting one, and he had this whole quest to he needed to join the Bards Guild, and to do that he had to like find this mystical being in the forest. And kind of in past experience, it'd be like, oh, you go to the forest and you look for the mystical being and you find him, yay. But like in Heroes, it was like, no, first he had to find a guide that could take him there. And so he asked around the village, and he found, you know, there's a guide at the edge of the forest in the little village. And so he goes to the hut of the guide, and like the guide is like kind of like resistant initially, and he manages to convince them to guide them. And so then they start going through the forest, and they like run into traps, and they have to navigate around the traps, and they run into these bandits, and Ryan has to like figure out this way to like convince the bandits not to attack them. And there's these challenges and obstacles that by the time he eventually like got there, it was this whole experience that was really meaningful and fun in a way that I think is hard to deliver on the past experiences. It's also cool, like, you know, from a perspective of helping new players get into AI Dungeon, you know, a phenomenon I see a lot is there's a lot of people who play AI Dungeon and have a hard time getting past the initial try crazy thing and see what happens, where they're like, try crazy thing. Oh, this is funny. Try crazy thing. But eventually they kind of lose interest. And I've seen, you know, a lot of people who start out trying to play that way in Heroes, but then the game is able to just guide them subtly into some really interesting quests. So someone was playing and they had, you know, they were like trying to do these crazy things, but then the AI kept kind of guiding them, not forcefully, but just in a subtle way towards, you know, it's like they notice these mysterious huddled figures and they're like, huh, interesting. They go talk to them and they get a quest, you know, to join the Assassin's Guild. And then they like go talk to the Assassins. They end up with these like series of challenges to join the guild that when they accomplished, like he got a ton of experience, he advanced his character, and he like joined this organization. And so there's this like pacing and flow that I think makes it way more fun for everyone, and especially new players, to be able to understand and get into the experience. So that's been really, really fun to see. Cool. Well, I think we're kind of near the end here, and just want to appreciate people for tuning in, and we're really excited for this. We're going to be sharing more and more as we go, yeah, I think, you know, it's going to be a journey, but there is this really exciting world we're going to get to, and that we're moving towards, of games where players have this freedom to create and to be who they are, and not only follow the path that kind of developers have pre-imagined, but have these real living persistent worlds. And we're really excited to build that, and to have you along on the ride. So thank you so much. And we'll share more with you over the coming weeks.